My name is Ava Gray, and I'm 35 years old. Some of you watching this probably know the name Gray Media. Maybe you've seen one of our documentaries on Netflix, or maybe you've scrolled past one of our viral short films online. But what you don't know is that the company everyone praises today, the company Forbes listed in their 25 Under 35 Innovators Shaping the Future of Digital Storytelling, was once called a waste of time by my own parents. I still remember the exact words my dad said when I tried to tell him about my dream. He looked up from his coffee, sighed, and said, "Ava, focus on real work. People don't build a life making videos. Get a stable job." That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at my laptop screen. I had just finished editing a short film about kindness, about a man who bought coffee for a stranger and changed her life. Only 2 people had watched it, my best friend, Lily, and me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't, because somewhere deep down I knew, one day, they'd see me. Fast forward 9 years later, Forbes had just published their new list. I was sitting in a hotel room in Toronto when my phone buzzed nonstop. Congratulations, Ava Gray, founder of Gray Media, Forbes 25 Under 35. It was surreal. The same name that my dad once rolled his eyes at was now printed in bold letters beside billion-dollar brands. My team threw a party that night. Champagne, laughter, the works. But then, as the noise settled, my phone rang. The caller ID made my heart skip.
Dad.
It had been almost 3 years since I last heard his voice. I froze before picking up. "Ava," he said softly, almost awkwardly, "your sister, she needs a little help. About $1,000 a week for a few months." For a moment, I said nothing. My throat tightened. "So did I once," I replied quietly. Then I ended the call. And that's when everything changed. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to take you back. Back to when I was 22. Back when Gray Media was just a dream written in a notebook. If you're watching this right now, tell me, where are you watching from? Because this story isn't just mine. It's about every person who's ever been told they weren't enough. Now, let's rewind. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the middle child between 2 siblings, Emily, the golden girl, and Noah, the quiet one. Dad worked in finance and Mom ran a real estate office. They were practical, efficient, and predictable, everything I wasn't. I was the kid with a camera in her hands, filming the world like it was magic. I made short clips about the people on our street. Mrs. Dyer, who left muffins at every doorstep. Old Mr. Jenkins, who fed stray cats behind the grocery store. I wanted to tell stories that made people feel something. But to my parents, I was wasting time. One day, when I was 19, I skipped my part-time shift at the diner to shoot my first short film. It was about a girl who gave away her shoes to a homeless woman and walked home barefoot. When Dad found out, he didn't shout, he just looked disappointed, which somehow hurt worse. "Ava, you're not a kid anymore," he said. "This filming nonsense won't pay your bills." I remember whispering, "Maybe it will one day." He just shook his head. That night, I cried into my pillow. I wanted his approval more than I wanted air. But life has a way of forcing you to stand on your own when no one believes in you. So I got to work. I worked 3 jobs: waitress, dog walker, and weekend video editor for a local church, just to buy a used Canon camera. I shot weddings, graduation parties, even funerals, anything that paid. I filmed my friends acting out emotional stories on weekends. Sometimes, we'd shoot in the rain because the light looked better. Sometimes, I'd edit until sunrise, hands shaking from exhaustion. But every video I made, every story I told, got a few more views than the last. Then one day, everything changed. A small nonprofit in Chicago saw one of my videos, a short documentary about a janitor who used his lunch break to teach local kids math. They reached out. "We want you to make something for us," the email read. "We can't pay much, but your work moved us." I didn't even read the rest before replying yes. That project, that little documentary, got picked up by a local news station. Within weeks, people started emailing me from all over the state. Schools wanted similar films. Companies wanted authentic stories for their brands. That's how Gray Media was born, from a dream that everyone else called unrealistic. But success doesn't erase pain. When I invited my parents to the first premiere of a short film we made for a charity, they didn't come. Mom said, "We're proud of you, sweetie, but your sister's got a piano recital that night. You understand." I smiled, pretending it didn't hurt. Inside, it did. Every milestone I reached, they found a reason to minimize it. "It's good that you're doing something," Dad would say, "but you should really look for a full-time job with benefits." Meanwhile, Emily, my older sister, got a new car, a new apartment, a fiancé, and endless praise. "She's so responsible," Mom would say. But the truth was, Emily's life wasn't perfect either. She just knew how to make it look perfect. Years passed. Gray Media grew. I hired a small team. We moved into a shared office. Our projects started winning small awards. Still, my parents barely acknowledged it. Until the day everything exploded. It started on a Tuesday. I was working on a campaign for a major hospital in New York. It was our biggest client, yet the kind of deal that could put us on the map. That same day, my dad called for the first time in years. When I saw his name on the screen, I froze. "Ava," he said, voice shaky. "How's work?" I laughed softly. "You mean my nonsense?" He cleared his throat. "Well, people are talking about your company. It's impressive." I didn't know whether to feel happy or angry. Then, he hesitated before saying, "Your sister needs some help. She's struggling financially. We were hoping you could send her about $1,000 weekly for a while." My stomach dropped. He didn't call to congratulate me. He called because he wanted something. I swallowed hard. "So did I once," I said, my voice steady but cold, "when no one cared." And then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I just sat there, quiet, calm, realizing that the people who once ignored my dreams now needed what my dreams had built. But what came after that call was something I never saw coming. Because that one decision, that one sentence, would shake the entire Gray family in ways none of us could have imagined. And trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. The night after that call, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window of my apartment in downtown Toronto, watching the city lights flicker like 1,000 tiny secrets. The phone lay beside me, still silent after I hung up on Dad. I half expected another call, maybe even a text from Mom, but nothing came. Just silence. Heavy, cold silence. I replayed his words again and again. "Your sister needs $1,000 weekly. We were hoping you could help." There was no, "How are you?" No, "Congratulations on Forbes." Just a request, neatly wrapped in family guilt. I thought of all the years I spent craving his approval. The nights I'd send him links to my videos, hoping he'd click one. He never did. Not once. Now, suddenly, my success had value because it could be used. But still, something inside me ached. Because despite everything, a part of me still loved them. I wasn't heartless. So, I didn't delete his number. I just turned off my phone and whispered to myself, "Let them see what silence feels like." The next morning, my assistant Lily came into my office holding a stack of printed emails. "Ava, you might want to see this." I took them, half distracted, until I saw the headline printed on the first page. Gray Media founder named among Forbes' top 25 under 35 innovators. And right under it, a quote from me they'd pulled from a past interview. I built Gray Media to tell stories that move hearts, not to impress people who never believed I could. The timing of that quote felt eerie. Lily smirked. "You sure know how to shake the internet." I laughed softly, but inside, I was thinking of Dad, wondering if he'd read that line. Later that afternoon, I went to grab coffee at a cafe near the office. As I walked in, I heard a voice from one of the tables. "Wait, are you Ava Gray? From Gray Media?" I turned. It was a young woman, maybe in her mid-20s, holding her phone. She looked nervous, but excited. "You made that short film about the foster mom, right? Home for Two?" I smiled. "Yes, that was us." She looked down, eyes glistening. "That story changed my life. I grew up in foster care too, and for the first time, I felt seen. Thank you. Her words hit harder than she knew. I walked out of that cafe realizing something. My worth was never supposed to be proven to my parents. It was proven to the people I helped. Still, later that evening, I got a message that twisted everything again. It wasn't from Dad this time, it was from Emily. Hey, Ava. Heard from Dad that you're doing great. Congrats on the Forbes thing. By the way, I'm in a bit of a mess. Can we talk? I just stared at the screen. Emily, the perfect one. The one who had always been responsible, disciplined. The example. The same sister who once laughed when Dad called my company a hobby. I should have ignored it. I wanted to, but curiosity and maybe compassion got the better of me. So I texted back. What's going on? She replied instantly. It's a long story. Can we meet? We met the next day at a quiet diner halfway between her town and mine. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The glow she always had, the confidence was gone. Her eyes looked tired, her hair unkempt, her clothes wrinkled. Ava, she said softly, sitting across from me. You look incredible. I forced a small smile. You don't. She laughed a little, but it faded fast. I guess I deserve that. The waitress brought coffee, and for a moment, we just sat there in silence. Then Emily took a deep breath. Ava, I need help. Financially. Things have been bad. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. After my divorce, I tried to start a small online business. It failed. Then Mom and Dad started relying on me to handle their bills because Dad's retirement plan didn't go as expected. Now, I'm drowning. I just need a little support until I can get back up. I stared at her, heart pounding. This was the same sister who once told me, you'll grow out of this film thing eventually. You're just chasing attention. And now she wanted my help. I took a sip of coffee and said quietly, Dad already called. She flinched. I didn't ask him to. I know, but you still let him. Her voice trembled. Ava, I'm not asking for pity. I thought maybe you'd understand. You, of all people. I wanted to yell. I wanted to remind her of every cruel word, every time she made me feel small. But looking at her, fragile, desperate, human, something inside me softened. I sighed. I'll think about it. Her eyes brightened with hope. Thank you. As she left, I sat alone for a long time, watching the door close behind her. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about her story didn't add up. The numbers didn't make sense, the kind of money she needed, the tone in Dad's voice, the urgency. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Mom. She picked up after the third ring. Ava? Honey? It's been so long. Her voice was sweet, rehearsed. Mom, I said, why does Emily need money every week? There was silence. Then she chuckled nervously. Oh, you know your sister. She's just trying to get back on her feet. Mom, I said slowly, is it really her debt? Or yours? Silence again. Longer this time. Then a shaky whisper. Your father made some bad investments. He didn't want you to know. I felt the blood drain from my face. So, that's what this was. It wasn't just Emily. It was all of them. They didn't want my help because they loved me. They wanted my help because they needed saving. And for the first time in my life, I realized the people who once told me to focus on real work had built their lives on mine. But what I did next would tear the entire Gray family apart. Because if they wanted the truth, I was about to give it to them. And not privately. Publicly. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop on the nightstand. It was Lily again. Ava, check your inbox. Now. Her voice sounded nervous, like something was wrong. Still half asleep, I opened my email and froze. There it was, an anonymous message sent to our company's official email. No greeting, no signature, just a single sentence and 3 attached photos. Your family is hiding something you should have known years ago. My heart pounded as I opened the first image. It was a blurry photo of my dad standing in front of a small office building with a sign that read Gray Financial Group. The second image showed him sitting across from a man in a dark suit, a man I instantly recognized. Our old landlord. And the third photo, it was a document, a business registration form, dated 8 years ago. Owner, Richard Gray. Co-owner, Emily Gray. Business name, Gray Media, LLC. I blinked, rereading the words until they blurred. Gray Media, my company's name. The name I spent years building from nothing. The name my father once said would never mean anything. And yet, here it was, registered by him and Emily, years before I even launched mine. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I scrolled down to the fine print. The registration had been quietly dissolved 5 years ago, the same year my Gray Media went public online. At that moment, everything clicked. Dad's sudden interest in my success. Emily's desperate request for money. Mom's strange silence when I asked questions. They had once tried to build a company under my name, and when theirs failed, they tried to attach themselves to mine. I felt sick. Lily watched me, concerned. Ava, what is it? I handed her the phone. They tried to register Gray Media before I even made it. Her eyes widened. Wait, you mean? Yes, I said, voice shaking. They tried to own it before I built it. I walked to the window, staring down at the city below. The world saw me as a symbol of resilience, a self-made success story. But behind the scenes, my own blood had tried to steal that very dream before it ever came true. Lily whispered, "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down, I wasn't sure if I wanted revenge or just the truth. 2 days later, I drove to my parents' house in Cleveland unannounced. It had been years since I last stood in that driveway. The house looked smaller now, the paint cracked, the windows dusty. Mom opened the door, startled.
Ava,
You should have told us you were coming. I didn't think you'd want me to, I said quietly. Before she could reply, Dad appeared behind her, still in his old gray sweater.
he froze when he saw me.
Ava, he said slowly. This is unexpected. I bet, I said, pushing past him into the living room. The room smelled like old coffee and dust, the same house that once echoed with lectures about responsibility and real jobs. I turned to face them both. Why did you register Gray Media? The question hit the air like thunder. Mom's eyes widened. Dad's lips pressed into a tight line. Where did you hear that? He asked finally. Does it matter? I said, my voice rising. You and Emily filed it 8 years ago. You tried to build something under my name before I even began.
Why?
He sighed heavily. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. I snapped. Mom stepped forward, voice trembling. Your father just wanted to create something for the family. A media firm, maybe a legacy we could all share. Then why didn't you tell me? I interrupted. Why did you mock me for building the same thing years later? Dad rubbed his temples. Because we failed, Ava. The business didn't work out. It was embarrassing. I didn't want you to waste your life chasing the same dream that ruined us. His words hit me like a punch. So that was it. He wasn't just being dismissive, he was projecting his own failure onto me. All those years he told me to focus on real work, he wasn't protecting me. He was protecting his pride. I stood there shaking. You could have told me. You could have warned me. But instead, you laughed at me. You made me feel like a fool.
Dad, look down.
We thought you'd give up, Mom whispered. We didn't think you'd make it this far. Something in me broke. You didn't think I'd make it, I repeated quietly. But you had no problem calling when I did. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could feel tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Finally, Dad said softly, You don't understand how hard it was for me, Ava. Watching you do what I couldn't. Then why didn't you cheer for me? I cut in. Why didn't you at least say, I'm proud of you? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I turned to leave. Mom tried to stop me. Ava, please. I shook my head.
No.
You don't get to ask me for help when you've spent my entire life doubting me. Then, just as I reached the door, Dad said something that made me freeze. You think you're the only one who's been hurt, Ava? You think success makes you better than us? I turned around slowly. No,
Dad.
It doesn't make me better. It just makes me free. And then I walked out. As I sat in my car, tears finally spilled down my cheeks. I thought confronting them would make me feel stronger, but instead, I felt hollow, like all the years of silence had finally caught up to me. Then my phone buzzed again. It was another message from an unknown number. If you think your family's lies ended there, you're wrong.
Meet me.
I have proof. The location was attached, a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Who was this person? How did they know so much? And what else were my parents hiding? I started the car, rain tapping against the windshield like a warning. Little did I know, the truth waiting for me at that cafe would not only expose my parents' secrets, it would also threaten everything gray media had become. The rain had turned the sky into a gray sheet, and the highway shimmered under it like melted steel. My wipers squeaked back and forth, keeping rhythm with my heartbeat as I drove toward the address in the text. It was a small cafe just outside Cleveland, the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked too long. Maggie's Corner Cafe. The sign was cracked, and the smell of burnt espresso hung in the air. I parked, sat in silence for a minute, then grabbed my umbrella and stepped out. Inside, the cafe was quiet. A few people sat in booths with their laptops, raincoats dripping onto the floor. At the far corner, a man in a navy jacket looked up when he saw me. He raised a hand slightly. Ava Gray. I hesitated, then nodded and walked over. He slid a file across the table before I even sat down. You don't know me, but I used to work with your father. The words froze me mid-motion. Work with him where? At Gray Financial Group, he said. Back when he started the first version of Gray Media. I sank into the seat. So, it's true. He nodded slowly. It's true, but there's more. My stomach tightened. What more? He opened the folder. Inside were financial records, old ones. Transfers, statements, and contracts. My name appeared on several of them, without my knowledge. I frowned. Why is my name on these? He tapped the page. Because when your father filed for business loans, he used your name as a marketing partner. Said you were the creative director of the company. It gave the application credibility. He told the bank you were on board. My breath caught. That's fraud. Yes, he said quietly. And it didn't stop there. When the business went bankrupt, the debts were left under your name too, at least partially. But since you were young and your credit score clean, it didn't raise red flags back then. I leaned back, stunned. All these years, while I was building my Gray Media, my father's old failures were legally tied to me. The man slid another paper forward. That's why I called you. I think someone's trying to use that connection against you now. Who? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He hesitated, then said, Your sister. I felt my chest tighten. Emily. He nodded. She recently contacted a few investors under your company's name. Claimed to be part of Gray Media's original founding team. She's trying to leverage your success to pull funding for herself. If this goes public, it could damage your credibility. The air in the cafe seemed to vanish. My ears rang. My sister. The one who had asked for a little help. The one who sat across from me crying about her failed business, was using my name again. I whispered, Do you have proof? He nodded and slid over his phone. On the screen were screenshots of emails sent from an address that read emilygraymedia@gmail.com. She had been reaching out to sponsors, claiming that Gray Media was expanding into new, family-led divisions. My vision blurred with anger. Why are you helping me? I asked finally. He shrugged. Because your father fired me the day I questioned his ethics. I figure helping you might be my way of balancing the scales. I nodded slowly, staring at the papers again. My father's debts. My sister's lies. My name, the same name I built from the ground up, tangled in their web. When I stood to leave, he said softly, Be careful, Ava. Family has a way of smiling while they pull the rug out from under you. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I sat in the car for a long time, my mind spinning. I could expose them. I had the documents. I could show the world that my family, the people who once called me a dreamer, had tried to destroy me from the start. But something inside me hesitated. Because exposing them publicly didn't feel like victory. It felt like another wound waiting to bleed. So instead, I called Lily. "Get the legal team on a call," I said. "Now." Within hours, my lawyer, Mark Benson, was on the line. Calm, methodical, and ruthless when needed. He skimmed through the files I sent. "This is serious, Ava. If these documents are legit, your sister committed misrepresentation and possibly identity theft. But we have to be smart about this. If it gets messy, it'll hit headlines fast." "I don't care about headlines," I said. "I care about the truth." "Good," he replied. "Then the first thing we'll do is file a cease and desist. The second thing, we'll freeze any unauthorized transactions linked to Gray Media's name. You'll need to sign a statement verifying this isn't your doing." I agreed, trying to stay calm. But inside, my emotions were crashing like waves: fury, betrayal, heartbreak, disbelief. Hours later, after all the legal calls and paperwork, I sat on my balcony with a blanket around me, watching the city below. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the strong, composed Forbes under 35 entrepreneur everyone admired. I felt like a little girl again, the one who just wanted her family to love her. My phone buzzed again. A new text. From Emily. "We need to talk. Please don't make this worse than it already is." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. "Then stop lying." She replied instantly. "You don't understand. If you dig deeper, you'll ruin all of us." I frowned.
What are you talking about?
No reply. For hours, I waited, staring at that screen, the little dots never appearing. Finally, I gave up, threw my phone on the couch, and went to bed. But around midnight, I woke to the sound of something shattering downstairs. I froze. Someone was inside my apartment. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, my heart racing. Through the faint reflection in the glass balcony door, I saw a shadow move across the living room. It was too dark to see clearly, but when the lightning flashed outside, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face. My breath hitched. It was Emily. She looked terrified, pale, soaked, and shaking. "Ava," she whispered, "you need to listen to me. They're coming for both of us." For a second, I couldn't even breathe. My own sister, the same one who had been dodging my texts all day, was standing in my living room, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor. Her mascara had streaked down her cheeks, her hair tangled, her eyes wide with panic. I took a shaky step back. "Emily, what the hell are you doing in my apartment?" She shut the door behind her, locking it, and turned to face me. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "They know you have the documents." My heart pounded. "Who's they?" She glanced toward the window, as if someone might be watching. "Dad's old investors, the ones from the first Gray Media. They were never repaid, Ava. And now that your company's in the spotlight, they think you were part of the scam. They think you used your fame to bury what he owed." I froze. "That's insane. I had nothing to do with that business." "I know," she said, trembling. "But they don't care. They've been following me for weeks. They want proof that you weren't involved, and they think I have it." Her voice broke, and she covered her face. I stood there in stunned silence, trying to piece it all together. "Emily, did you reach out to investors using my name because of them?" She nodded slowly. "They forced me. They said if I didn't find a way to get them their money, they'd come after me and Mom and Dad." I felt my knees weaken. "So you lied to me. You used my company's name." "I had no choice," she cried. "Dad said you'd never understand. He said if I asked you for help directly, you'd turn me away." Her voice cracked, desperate. He was right, wasn't he? I swallowed hard, anger and sorrow twisting in my chest. "You broke into my apartment, Emily. You could have just called." Tears filled her eyes. "I thought you'd block me." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside had softened to a quiet drizzle, and the city lights flickered through the window like ghosts. Then I said, "Sit down. Start from the beginning." She nodded, clutching her coat tighter around her. And what she told me next changed everything I thought I knew about my family. After Dad's first company failed, he'd been left with a mountain of debt, over $600,000 owed to two private investors. Instead of filing bankruptcy, he convinced them he could rebuild the business under a new name. That new name was Gray Media, but this time he used mine. He added my name to documents, claiming his daughter, a media expert, was part of the team. It bought him credibility and time. When the business still collapsed, he quietly dissolved it. The investors didn't find out until much later. When my Gray Media began growing, they thought it was a rebrand of the old one. To them, I wasn't an independent success story. I was the same Gray Media, now thriving on the money they lost. And Emily, she had become their bridge. They made me promise to get money from you, she said quietly, twisting her hands together. They said they'd leak everything, the papers, the fake registration, the bank loans, unless I could convince you to pay them off. I felt cold all over. So when Dad called, asking me to send you $1,000 a week, she nodded miserably. He wasn't asking for me. He was asking for them. My stomach churned. All those years of silence. All that pride. And now, the truth, they hadn't ignored me out of disappointment. They'd ignored me out of fear. They were terrified I'd uncover the mess they built in my name. Emily reached across the table, desperate. Please, Ava. You have to help me fix this before they come after you too. I stood up, pacing the room. My hands were shaking. You expect me to clean up their crimes? After everything they did? After what you did? Her voice trembled. Ava, they're dangerous. I thought I could handle it, but I can't. Please. Why didn't you come to me sooner? I demanded. Why didn't you just tell me the truth instead of lying and pretending to need money for yourself? She covered her face again, sobbing. Because I thought you'd hate me. I stared at her. My sister. The girl I grew up with. The girl who once braided my hair before school. And all I saw was fear. Maybe she deserved it. Maybe she didn't. But she looked more broken than I'd ever seen her. I took a deep breath, then whispered. Okay. You're staying here tonight. We'll figure it out in the morning. Her head snapped up. You mean it? I mean it, I said. But if you lie to me again, Emily, even once, we're done. Forever. She nodded through her tears. I promise. I handed her a blanket and some dry clothes, then went to my bedroom. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat there all night, replaying every moment. Dad's voice on the phone, Mom's nervous laughter, the investors' threats. Everything finally made sense, and yet nothing did. When dawn broke, I stepped onto my balcony. The city was quiet, still wet from the rain. I thought about all the people who told me to give up. All the years I had fought to build something real. And now, the truth threatened to destroy it. But I wasn't 20 anymore. I wasn't that girl crying over YouTube views and cheap cameras. I was Ava Gray, CEO, founder, survivor. And if my family wanted to drag me down, they were about to find out just how high I could fight. Just as I turned back to go inside, my phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number again. If you don't pay what your father owed, the story goes live tonight. Attached was a photo of me and Emily sitting in my apartment just hours earlier. Someone had taken it from outside. I froze. They knew where we were. The sound of my heartbeat filled the silence. I stared at the photo on my phone, me and Emily sitting in my own apartment, taken through the window only a few hours ago. Someone had been outside, watching us. Emily was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, unaware that danger was already at our door. I moved quietly, pulling the curtains closed and locking every window. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone again. If you don't pay what your father owed, the story goes live tonight. The message was unsigned. No name. No number ID. Just a threat and a timestamp. I glanced at the clock. 7:43 a.m. Whatever was coming, I had less than 12 hours to stop it. I stood in the living room, thinking fast. Calling the police wasn't an option. There were no direct threats of violence, and I had no proof anyone was physically near my building. And if I went to the media, it would spark the exact scandal they wanted. So I took a breath, grabbed my laptop, and began digging. If they were bluffing, I'd find out. But as the hours passed, the puzzle grew darker. The message came from a scrambled online relay, untraceable. The photo had metadata, stripped clean. Whoever sent, it wasn't just some angry investor. They were professionals. By the time Emily woke up, my apartment was lit only by the blue glow of my screen. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "You didn't sleep?" I didn't look up.
No.
But I found something. I turned the laptop toward her. The message came from a VPN server registered to Toronto. That's where Dad's old office was. Her face went pale. "You think he's behind this?" "I think he's involved," I said. "Or at least someone he used to work with. Maybe one of the investors." She shook her head quickly. "No, it can't be. He promised they'd leave us alone." "Emily," I said firmly, "you don't make deals with people like that. You pay or you suffer." She hugged her knees, looking small and scared. "What are you going to do?" I looked at her. "I'm going to find out who's behind this. And I'm going to stop them." Her voice trembled. "But how?" I stood up and grabbed my keys. "By going straight to the person who started it, Dad."
She gasped.
"Ava, no. You haven't spoken to him in years." "Exactly," I said, opening the door. "It's about time we talked." The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it should have. The October air was cold and sharp, the sky gray and heavy. I hadn't seen their home since the night I left for Los Angeles, the night Dad told me to focus on real work. When I finally parked in the driveway, the house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The garden Mom once loved was overgrown. I hesitated before knocking. When Dad opened the door, his face went blank, like he'd seen a ghost. "Ava." His voice was rough. "What are you doing here?" I pushed past him into the living room. "We need to talk." Mom appeared in the hallway, wringing her hands. "Ava, sweetheart, what's wrong?" I turned to face them both. "You tell me." "Someone's been threatening me over your debts." Dad froze. Mom's eyes darted between us. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and held up the message. "You know exactly what I mean. Gray Media, the first one. You registered it using my name when I was 19, didn't you?" Dad's jaw tightened.
Who told you that?
"Does it matter?" I snapped. "I need the truth." He sighed and sank into his armchair, rubbing his temples. "I didn't think it would come to this. The investors were impatient. I needed something to show them. Your name was just a placeholder, a temporary thing." "Temporary?" I laughed bitterly. "You forged my name on a company that owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was supposed to be fixed," he shouted suddenly. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." "Pressure?" I repeated. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? Those men think I stole from them." He didn't answer. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Your father thought if your new company did well, maybe we could repay them quietly and no one would find out." I turned to her in disbelief. "You knew?" Tears filled her eyes. "I just wanted to protect you, Ava. I thought the past would stay buried." My chest tightened. Well, it didn't. Dad looked up, guilt etched across his face. "What did they say to you?" "They want money," I said flatly. "Or they'll destroy everything I've built." He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Then we'll pay them, whatever it takes." "With what?" I asked sharply. "You don't have that kind of money, Dad. And I'm not paying for your mistakes." He looked at me, defeated. "Then what do you expect me to do?" I stared at him, the man who had dismissed me, belittled me, and now needed me to save him. "I expect you to tell me everything," I said. "Every name, every date, every transaction." He hesitated.
"Now, Dad."
He finally nodded and disappeared into his study. When he returned, he was holding a small metal lockbox. It was old, scratched, and heavy. He placed it on the coffee table. "It's all in here. The contracts, the letters, the receipts." I reached for it, but he put his hand on mine. "Be careful, Ava. These people aren't just businessmen. They're dangerous." "I can handle it," I said. He nodded slowly, but his eyes were full of fear. As I turned to leave, Mom grabbed my arm. Please don't make things worse, sweetheart. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the years of silence and guilt behind her tears. I won't, I said softly, but I'm not going to let them ruin me either. I left without another word. When I got back to my apartment, Emily was waiting by the window. Did you find anything? She asked. I dropped the metal box on the table.
Yeah.
I found everything. We spent hours going through it. Contracts, wire transfers, fake signatures, and bank notes. It was worse than I imagined. My name appeared on half the documents, all forged in Dad's handwriting. But there was something else, a name that appeared repeatedly alongside the investors. Who's Daniel Cross? I asked. Emily looked at the papers, her face draining of color. That's one of the investors. He was the one who handled everything in person. Do you know where he is now? She hesitated. Toronto. I sat back thinking. Then that's where I'm going next.
She gasped.
Ava, no. You can't go there. He's dangerous. I don't care, I said firmly. If he wants to destroy my company, he's going to have to look me in the eye first. Emily reached for my hand. Please, Ava. Don't do this alone. But I already knew what I had to do. I walked to my desk, pulled out my passport, and started packing a small bag. The next morning, before sunrise, I boarded a flight to Toronto. I didn't tell Emily where I was going. I didn't tell anyone. But as the plane lifted into the clouds, I felt it in my gut. This wasn't just about family anymore. It was about survival. And when I landed, waiting at the terminal gate, was a man in a gray coat holding a sign that said, Ava Gray. I froze. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. The man in the gray coat lowered the sign when our eyes met. He didn't smile, didn't move, he just watched me. His expression was unreadable, his stance calm but firm, like someone who knew more than he wanted to say. I hesitated in the middle of the terminal. My phone was in my hand, ready to dial security, but something in me said don't panic yet. I walked toward him slowly. Who are you? He nodded once, speaking in a low voice. Miss Gray. My name's Colin. I work with Mr. Cross. My heart lurched. Daniel Cross. Yes, he said. He asked me to meet you. Said you'd come. How did he know I was coming? Colin looked at me steadily. Mr. Cross keeps track of everyone connected to the First Gray media. Especially you. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I took a small step back. If he's watching me, then you can tell him I'm not here to negotiate. I just want the truth. Colin didn't blink. Then you'll get it. Mr. Cross doesn't hide behind lawyers. He prefers to talk face to face. He motioned toward the exit. Cars outside. He's expecting you. I glanced toward the doors, then back at him. My instinct screamed danger, but curiosity, or maybe anger, pushed harder. Fine, I said finally. Take me to him. He led me out to a black SUV parked by the curb. The city was cold and gray, the air sharp with the smell of rain. Toronto always had a kind of quiet heaviness in the morning, the sound of tires on wet streets, the faint hum of distant traffic. I climbed into the back seat, keeping my phone unlocked in my hand. The driver didn't speak. Colin sat in the front, occasionally glancing at me through the mirror. After 20 minutes, the car pulled into a narrow street lined with old brick warehouses. We stopped in front of one with tinted windows and a single steel door. This way, Colin said, opening the door. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. The place wasn't dark or sinister, just quiet, sterile, and controlled. A few people sat at desks with computers, typing. And then I saw him. Daniel Cross. He was older than I expected, late 50s, maybe early 60s, with silver hair and a sharp, assessing gaze. He wore a simple black suit, no tie, and an expensive watch that gleamed under the light. When he saw me, he smiled faintly. Ava Gray. The woman who took my company's name and made it famous again. I clenched my jaw. You mean the company my father used to trick you? He chuckled softly. Perspective, my dear. Your father used my money to build it. You used my brand to rebuild your life. Maybe we're both victims. Or maybe we're both opportunists. I didn't know about any of that, I snapped. I built my company from scratch. I know you did, he said calmly, leaning back in his chair. That's why I didn't destroy you sooner.
His words hit like a slap.
He studied me for a long moment. You're angry.
Good.
Anger makes people honest. Tell me, what do you want, Ava? I took a deep breath. I want you to leave me and my company alone. He tilted his head. And if I don't, I'll go public, I said. With everything. The forged contracts, the illegal registration, the threats. You'll lose whatever leverage you think you have. He smiled again, this time wider. You think I'm the one threatening you? I frowned. Aren't you? He shook his head slowly. I haven't contacted you. Not once. The people sending those messages, they're not mine. For a second, I just stared. What are you talking about? Someone else found those documents before I did, he said. They approached me a few months ago, pretending to represent you. They said you wanted to buy your father's debt back quietly. My chest tightened. Who? He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a printed email, my name in the signature line, but an address I didn't recognize. And attached to that email was a photo of Emily. She's been negotiating with them, he said quietly. Or maybe being used by them. Either way, it's not me you should be afraid of. I sank into the chair opposite him. You're saying my sister's working with whoever's blackmailing me? He nodded once. Either by choice or by fear. But if they have her, they have everything, the contracts, the proof, and access to you. My thoughts spun. Emily had begged for help, cried in my living room, sworn she wanted to fix it. Had it all been an act? I can't believe this, I whispered. Daniel folded his hands. Believe what you want. But if you want to protect yourself, you'll need to move first. Move how? He looked me straight in the eye. Cut her off.
Publicly.
Legally. Make it clear you have nothing to do with her. Or your father's company. That's the only way they'll stop coming after you. I shook my head, feeling sick. You're asking me to betray my own sister. He shrugged. You're not betraying her. You're saving yourself. His words echoed in my mind long after I left his office. Back in my hotel room, I stared at the Toronto skyline through the window, my thoughts tangled. If Daniel was telling the truth, then Emily wasn't a victim. She was part of the setup. But what if he was lying? My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You shouldn't have met with Cross. My heart froze. Then another message came through. We warned you once. You have 1 hour to decide who you're loyal to. Attached was a live photo. Emily, sitting in a dimly lit room, bound to a chair, tears streaking her face. And behind her a man's shadow. My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the edge of the desk, my breath shallow. Whoever was behind this wasn't bluffing anymore. They had my sister. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My mind went completely blank, just that single image replaying over and over again. Emily, tied to a chair, her face wet with tears. I tried calling the number that sent the photo, but it went straight to voicemail. Then the messages vanished, deleted remotely before I could even screenshot them. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't a threat anymore. It was real. I grabbed my coat and keys and rushed out of the hotel, my thoughts racing. If Daniel Cross was telling the truth, then this had nothing to do with him, which meant someone else was pulling the strings. Someone who knew both me and my sister. I jumped into a cab. Take me back to the warehouse district.
Now.
The driver glanced at me in the mirror but didn't ask questions. I didn't care if it sounded crazy. I needed answers, and Daniel was the only one who seemed to have some. When I burst into his office 30 minutes later, he didn't even look surprised. I take it you've seen the photo, he said calmly. I slammed my phone on his desk. Where is she? He leaned back unruffled. If I knew, don't you think I'd tell you? They're playing both of us, Ava. Whoever's behind this is smarter than you realize. I glared at him. You're going to help me find her. A flicker of respect crossed his face.
Good.
Anger will keep you sharp. He turned to his computer and typed something quickly. Give me a few minutes. I paced the room while he worked, every second feeling like an hour. Finally, he looked up. There's been unusual activity on an old account, one that used to belong to your father. It's been moving money in small amounts. Someone's keeping it active. Can you trace it? He nodded. Already did. Transfers are being routed through a private bank in Hamilton. That's about an hour from here. I didn't hesitate. Let's go. He raised an eyebrow.
We.
Yes, we. You're coming with me. He studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod.
Fine.
But you understand that if they catch on, they'll come after both of us. Then we'll make sure they don't. The drive to Hamilton was long and silent. The city faded into fields and quiet roads lined with bare trees. The sky was heavy with low gray clouds, and the air felt tense, like the world was holding its breath. Daniel finally spoke. You care about your sister more than I expected. I kept my eyes on the road. She's my family. He nodded slowly. Family makes people brave. And stupid. Maybe, I said, gripping the steering wheel tighter. But it also makes us human. When we arrived at the address linked to the bank account, it wasn't a bank at all. It was an old, abandoned print shop. The windows were boarded up, and weeds grew through cracks in the pavement.
This can't be it, I said.
Daniel stepped out of the car and scanned the building. Oh, it's it. They use shell locations like this all the time. Quiet, forgotten. Perfect for business that doesn't want to be seen. He motioned for me to stay back, but I followed anyway. We slipped around the side of the building where a faint light glowed through a crack in the door. He pushed it open slowly. Inside was a maze of old machinery, dusty shelves, and scattered papers. The faint hum of a generator came from deeper within. Then we heard it, a muffled cry. Emily, I whispered. I rushed forward before Daniel could stop me, following the sound through a narrow hallway until I reached a small office in the back. She was there, tied to a chair, blindfolded, shaking. Emily. I ran to her, ripping off the blindfold. It's me, it's okay. She gasped, her eyes wild with fear.
Ava?
You shouldn't be here, they said. Who said? I demanded, working to untie the ropes around her wrists. Before she could answer, a voice spoke from behind me. I did. I spun around. Standing in the doorway was a man I didn't recognize, mid-40s, clean suit, cold eyes. He looked like the kind of man you'd pass in a crowd and never remember. Except his presence made the air feel heavy. Daniel stepped into the room behind him, his expression unreadable. Hello, Ava, the man said smoothly. My name is Victor. Your father owed me a great deal of money. When he disappeared, I decided to come to the next best thing, his daughter. I glared at him. You're the one who's been sending the messages. He smiled faintly. You're quick. I like that. Let her go, I said through my teeth. He tilted his head. And why would I do that? Your sister promised to repay me. Then she disappeared. So, I found a new way to make her keep her word. Daniel spoke up. Victor, this isn't how you do business. Victor gave a short laugh. Don't lecture me, Cross. You had your chance to collect years ago. They stared at each other, and suddenly I understood. They weren't strangers. They knew each other. Wait, I said, stepping between them. You two know each other? Neither answered. My stomach dropped. Daniel, what is this? He exhaled slowly. He's the third investor, Ava. The one your father never told me about. Victor smiled thinly. And the only one who never got paid. Emily whimpered behind me. Ava, please just give him what he wants. I turned to her. What does he want? Victor's voice was calm, cold. 50% of gray media. In writing. Today. I stared at him. You think I'm going to hand over my company to you? He shrugged. Think of it as your father's debt, finally repaid. Over my dead body, I said. He smiled wider. That can be arranged. He pulled a gun from his jacket and pointed it at Emily. My heart stopped. Daniel stepped forward. Victor, don't. Quiet, Victor snapped. I told you to stay out of this. The room went silent. I raised my hands slowly. Okay. You win. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't hurt her. Victor smirked, lowering the gun slightly. That's better. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a contract, freshly printed, with my company's name already on it. He handed me a pen. Right there. Signature line. My hand trembled as I took it. I looked at Emily, at Daniel, then at Victor. And in that split second, I made a decision. I wasn't going to give him my company. I was going to end this. I pressed the pen against the paper, then threw the entire contract into the air and kicked the metal desk forward with all my strength. It crashed into Victor's knees, and he stumbled back, dropping the gun. Run, I shouted. Emily scrambled to her feet as Daniel lunged for the gun. A single shot rang out, echoing through the warehouse. I screamed. Daniel fell to the ground, blood spreading across his shirt. Victor turned the gun toward me next, fury in his eyes. Big mistake, Miss Gray. I froze, staring at him, heart pounding, as he stepped closer, finger tightening on the trigger. The sound of my heartbeat drowned everything. Victor's eyes locked on mine, his finger trembling on the trigger. The gun was aimed straight at my chest. I didn't move. Not an inch. Behind me, Emily let out a choked sob. Daniel groaned on the ground, clutching his stomach. The metallic smell of blood filled the air. You should have just signed, Ava, Victor said, his voice cold and steady. Now you lose everything. Put the gun down, I said quietly, forcing my voice not to shake. You don't need to do this. He tilted his head, smirking. You're your father's daughter, always trying to talk your way out of trouble. I'm not him, I said. You're not dealing with a coward. You're dealing with someone who built everything from nothing. So, if you think you can scare me into surrendering, you don't know who I am. His smile faltered for the briefest second, and that was enough. I lunged forward, grabbing the barrel of the gun with both hands. He tried to pull it back, but I twisted hard, slamming my knee into his side. The weapon fired again, deafeningly loud, the bullet ricocheting off the metal wall. Victor shouted, stumbling backward. I shoved the gun away and kicked it across the floor. It slid under one of the machines. Emily screamed, Ava, look out. Victor swung at me, catching my shoulder. Pain shot down my arm. I stumbled but didn't fall. Adrenaline burned through me. He lunged again, but this time I ducked and grabbed a broken metal rod from the floor, swinging it upward. It connected with his arm, a sickening crack. He howled and staggered back, clutching it. Stay down, I shouted. But he didn't. He reached for something inside his jacket, another weapon maybe, when suddenly, Daniel, bleeding but alive, pushed himself up and tackled him from behind. The two men crashed to the floor, struggling. Go! Daniel yelled, his voice hoarse. Take your sister and go. I hesitated. I'm not leaving you. He turned his head just long enough to shout, Now! I grabbed Emily's hand and ran. We bolted through the hallway, our footsteps echoing against the concrete. My lungs burned, my heart racing. Behind us, another gunshot exploded. Then silence. We didn't stop until we were outside, the cold air biting our skin. I looked around wildly for a car, a road, anything. The street was empty. Emily was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Ava, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this. I just wanted to fix things. I pulled her close, my own hands trembling. We'll fix it. But right now, we need to get help. We ran down the street until we found an old gas station. I burst inside, panting. The clerk stared at us, wide-eyed. Call the police, I gasped. There's a man with a gun down the road. Someone's been shot. The clerk grabbed the phone immediately. I slumped against the counter, still clutching Emily's hand. When the police arrived minutes later, everything felt blurry. Lights flashing, officers shouting, questions being fired at me that I couldn't process. They stormed the warehouse while a medic checked my shoulder and Emily's wrists. One of the officers returned after a while, his expression unreadable. We found two men inside. One dead, the other unconscious. You're lucky you made it out alive. I swallowed hard. Which one's alive? He looked at me. The one named Cross. My knees nearly buckled with relief. Daniel was alive.
Victor, though, was gone.
Hours later, I sat in the hospital waiting room. Emily was asleep beside me, her head on my shoulder. The white walls buzzed with a faint hum of fluorescent lights. Daniel was in surgery. The doctors said he'd lost a lot of blood, but was stable. A detective came over to me with a clipboard. Miss Gray, we went through the building. We found forged documents, wiring equipment, and a few drives. Looks like Victor is planning to use your company's digital assets to launder money. I rubbed my face. So, it was never about the old death. He shook his head.
No.
That was just fate. He knew your family's history made you vulnerable. He used it to pull you in. I exhaled shakily. What happens now? We'll need you to make a full statement, he said. After that, you're free to go. But, Miss Gray, I'd advise you to take security precautions. Someone like Victor doesn't usually work alone. My stomach twisted. You mean there could be more? He gave a grim nod. Maybe, but we'll find out soon. After he left, I just sat there, numb. Everything that had happened, the messages, the threats, the lies, it all crashed down on me like a wave. Emily stirred beside me, mumbling softly. Is he dead? I nodded. Yeah. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know it would go this far. I thought I could fix it by talking to him. He said he'd forgive Dad's debt if I just got you to sign something. I closed my eyes. Emily, you can't keep trusting people who promise easy answers. Not in this world. She nodded weakly. I know. We sat there in silence for a long time. When the nurse finally told me Daniel was awake, I went straight to his room. He was pale but conscious, one arm bandaged, eyes open and steady. You shouldn't have come back, he said weakly. You shouldn't have gotten shot, I countered. He gave a faint, tired smile. Fair point. I sat down beside him. Why did you help me, Daniel? You didn't owe me anything. He looked at me for a long time before answering. Because once, your father owed me everything. And I realized somewhere along the line, maybe you were the only one who ever tried to make it right. That hit me harder than I expected. Before I could reply, he added, Victor wasn't working alone. He had files on multiple shell companies, all tied to one name, Gray Holdings. Ever heard of it? I frowned.
No.
He said it belonged to someone close to your family. Someone who helped move the money after the first Gray media collapsed. My breath caught.
Who?
Daniel's eyes met mine. Your mother. The world tilted. For a second, I couldn't even process it. That's not possible. She signed off on the transfers, he said quietly. I saw the documents before everything went bad. I shook my head.
No.
She wouldn't. She's not like Dad. He looked at me with something like pity. You'd be surprised what people will do when they're trying to protect what's left of their family. I stood up, my pulse hammering. If that was true, if Mom was part of this, then everything I thought I knew about why they ignored me, why they stayed silent all those years, was a lie. And I wasn't sure I was ready to know the truth. But I had to. I looked down at Daniel. Rest. I'll be back. Then I turned and walked out of the hospital, my heart pounding, my thoughts racing. The next stop was home, not to my apartment, but to the house I'd sworn I'd never set foot in again. Because this time, I wasn't going there as a daughter. I was going there for answers. And I was ready to tear every secret out of that house until I got them. The drive to my parents' house felt like stepping backward through time. Every street, every streetlight, every turn held the ghost of an older version of me, the girl who used to believe that working hard would earn her parents' approval. The same girl who once stood outside this house with her first camera, begging her dad to come to her school presentation. Now I was coming back, not for love, but for truth. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The white paint was cracked in some places, the flower beds dry. It was past midnight, yet every light in the house was on. I stepped out of the car, my hands still trembling. My mind replayed Daniel's words again and again. Your mother signed off on the transfers. I climbed the porch stairs and knocked. It didn't take long. The door opened, and there she was, my mother. She looked startled, as though she'd seen a ghost. Ava? Oh my God. What happened to you? I saw the news. Are you okay? Her eyes darted to the bruise on my shoulder, the dried blood on my sleeve. She reached out, but I stepped back. Don't, I said quietly. We need to talk. She froze. Talk about what? I met her eyes. Gray Holdings. Her face went pale. Where did you hear that name? She whispered. From Daniel Cross, I said. He said you signed the documents that moved Dad's stolen money through fake companies. He said you were part of it. She blinked rapidly, shaking her head. No, Ava, that's not true. Then tell me what is true. She looked over her shoulder, as if checking whether Dad was around. The air between us grew thick. Come inside, she said finally, her voice trembling.
Please.
I hesitated, then stepped in. The house smelled the same, cinnamon candles, old wood, and faint perfume. I sat down in the living room where I'd once been scolded for wasting electricity on late-night work. Mom sat across from me, wringing her hands. Ava, you have to understand, things weren't simple back then. Your father, he was in deep trouble. If I hadn't helped, we would have lost everything. I stared at her. So you did it. Tears filled her eyes.
Yes.
But it wasn't for greed. It was for survival. I moved the money under another name, so he wouldn't go to prison. You were in college, your sister was still in high school. We couldn't lose him. My chest tightened. You protected him, and in doing that, you destroyed everything else. You let me believe I was crazy when I tried to rebuild what he broke. She looked away, guilt heavy on her face. I thought I was protecting you. No, I said softly. You were protecting your comfort. The words hung in the air like a blade. Before she could respond, the sound of footsteps came from the hallway. My father appeared, wearing his old robe, a mug in hand. When he saw me, his face hardened. What are you doing here? I came for answers, I said, standing. About what? About Gray Holdings. About what you and Mom did after the company fell. His mug hit the table with a thud. Don't start digging where you don't belong, Ava. That's not your concern. I stepped closer. It is my concern. You let me think you lost everything when really you moved it. You watched me struggle, sleep in a studio apartment, sell my car, and you never said a word. Because you were too ashamed to admit you were still living off stolen money. He glared at me. You think you built Gray Media without her name? Without the legacy of Gray attached to you? I built it in spite of it, I snapped. Silence fell. Mom whispered, Henry, stop. But he didn't. He stepped forward, voice low and angry. You think Forbes makes you better than your family? You think because some magazine put your face on their list, you can come here and talk down to us? I felt my hands shaking.
No, Dad.
I think being honest makes me better than who you chose to become. His eyes flashed with fury. You ungrateful child. I was your child when I needed $1 for rent. When I needed someone to believe in me. But you told me to focus on real work. I stepped closer, meeting his glare head-on. Now I am. And that real work is ending this. Every shady company, every hidden account. I'm done living under the weight of your lies. He moved as if to shout, but Mom suddenly stepped between us. Henry, stop it, she cried. She's right. He froze. She turned to me, tears spilling down her cheeks. Ava, I tried to make it right. After you left, I tried to close the accounts. But the man who helped us move the money, he threatened to expose everything. That's when Victor got involved. I didn't know how deep it went. I swear I didn't. I stared at her. Victor was blackmailing you? She nodded weakly. Yes. That's why Emily met him. He said if we didn't pay, he'd ruin your company. I thought maybe if we convinced you to sign one small contract, it would all go away. The pieces fell together. The threats, the forged papers, Emily's fear. I felt sick. You all used me, I whispered. Again. Mom tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. Then, suddenly, headlights flashed outside the window. A car door slammed. Dad frowned. Who the hell is that? Before anyone could move, the front door burst open. 3 men in dark suits stormed in. One of them, tall, cold-eyed, raised a badge.
FBI.
Henry Gray, you're under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Dad's face drained of color. What? This is ridiculous. Another agent read him his rights while cuffing him. Mom sobbed, covering her mouth. I stood frozen, my mind spinning. The lead agent turned to me. Ms. Gray, your statement at the hospital helped confirm a lot of what we needed. We've been tracking Gray Holdings for months. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. Dad was shouting as they led him out the door, his voice echoing through the hall. You did this. You betrayed your own family, Ava. I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching the man who once told me I'd never make it being pushed into a squad car under flashing red and blue lights. Mom sank into a chair, sobbing quietly. When the house finally went quiet, I sat across from her. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I felt empty. Was it worth it? I asked softly. All that lying, all that hiding, was it worth watching your own daughter struggle alone? She looked up at me, broken.
No.
It was never worth it. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I stood. Then this ends here. Weeks later, I sat in Gray Media's new office, overlooking the city. The world had changed again, but this time, I wasn't running from it. The scandal hit the news everywhere. Former Gray Corp founder arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud case. My phone didn't stop ringing for days. But I ignored every call except one, the call from Daniel. He'd recovered, his voice still rough. You okay? Not really, I said honestly. But I will be. He chuckled softly. You always are. He paused before adding, for what it's worth, you did the right thing. Maybe, I said. But doing the right thing doesn't make it hurt less. No, he agreed. But it makes you free. When we hung up, I looked out at the skyline, the same one I used to dream of conquering. Gray Media had survived. My team had survived. Emily was in therapy, trying to start fresh. Mom had moved out of the city, living quietly, sending me short letters I wasn't sure I was ready to open yet. And me? I was learning to forgive. Not because they deserved it, but because I needed peace. I pulled out my phone and opened the message thread that started it all. My father's old text. Your sister needs $1,000 weekly. I typed back, slowly. So did I once. But I made it. Then I hit delete. Outside, the morning light hit the Gray Media sign, casting a silver glow over the glass walls. And for the first time in years, I smiled, not because of success, but because I finally understood what freedom truly meant. It wasn't about money, or recognition, or proving anyone wrong. It was about finally being able to breathe without carrying the weight of the people who once told you to dream smaller. And I was breathing again.